Hello friends, welcome to another exciting video. In this video, we are going to look into how changing the data model can achieve some unusual reporting requirements. Yes, exactly, unusual. In this particular scenario, actually in this particular video, what I'm going to talk about is something which I actually came across, and this was the requirement of one of my client. It's not like something I just made up, but it was just one of those weird requirement, and you have to figure out a way to do that. Let's look at what we are trying to solve here. Look into Power BI, and then I will walk through what the requirement is and then how I solved it by simply changing the data model. Semantic model, actually, not data model. Again, it's very important that you are paying attention to your modeling than more than anything else, more than even your DAX, learning of DAX and other part of it. Everything is important, but modeling is really critical. Let's take a look. Here what I have is a very simple model. We have a calendar table, of course, time intelligence calendar table, 100%, nothing new in there. A customer table, again, this is just a data model with the sales and a customer. So a customer table and a sales over period. uh, Everything is pretty simple and straightforward, but there is a something unique in this requirement and the reason for the video. Let's look at the data. I'm going to get to different tables here. So this is actually a sales table where we have a customer, of course, code and a date and when the sales happened. And then I also have another customer table. What customer table has is this is the important part. The customer table is, of course, customer ID, which is again sample data. That's the unique key which we're setting the relationship with sales table, and it has a three different attributes here: MTD, YTD, and QTD. And actually they are called like a same stores attributes. Like, what is the same store MTD for customer A, what is the same store status YTD, and what is the same store status for QTD. Again, this particular dimension, the same store MTD, QTD, and YTD was coming from the backend system where it was already pre-computed and associated with the customer. Okay, if it's a month to date, customer A, this is the same store. Again, I made this dummy data. Customer B is the same store, but customer C is other, or maybe call it non same store, whatever you want to call it. But the point here is these attribute for the customer is based on some sort of a time intelligence associated with that. Like if it's a month to date, then this use this same store attribute. If YTD use this same store attribute, if QTD use this same store attribute. So that's basically what it was. Now there was one complicated requirement in with this thing was, okay, they want give user the ability that the user can pick and choose whether they want to see the MTD value, QTD, or YTD. Again, calculation groups is our friend in scenario like this. I have tons of videos on calculation groups and a playlist on that. I love calculation groups. Do check out those videos. Or in this particular scenario, maybe you can also use the field parameters, but this particular specific use case was a calculation groups because there was low more things happening which we could not achieve with field parameters, so we have to use calculation groups. So I'm keeping field parameters aside, just don't want to be somebody comes back and say, okay, you know what, you could have achieved this with field parameters as well. But this particular scenario is where the calculation group is involved, and that's been used, and that's one of the key component of this particular requirement or the video. There was a calculation groups called time intelligence, and it has three calculation items: MTD, QTD, and YTD. First thing, let me walk through calculation groups. I was actually about to open Tabular Editor, but now with the newer Power BI desktop version, you can actually author calculation groups within Power BI desktop. You don't need a third-party tool like Tabular Editor. Although I love working with Tabular Editor, it's much easier. But I'm going to show this thing in in Power BI desktop itself. Again, if you want to see or create a new calculation groups, just for your knowledge, you have to come to the modeling tab in a model view, and then in the model you can actually create or change or update your calculation groups. So here I had one calculation group called time intelligence, and it has, of course, as I said, three calculation items: MTD, and there was a measure written in there. I don't want to go over this measure because this is sample data. I have to do certain things to make it work. Maybe that is some another point of time where I will do a video on this, what I'm doing here. But the point is, there were three different calculation items: MTD, QTD, and YTD, which were driving the logic. And how these were getting used. So if I go to the visualization page, so I'm looking at data by month from calendar dimension and some sales. So if I do a QTD, and then I was getting the quarter date data. If I'm looking at the month to date, I'm getting MTD data. And if I'm clicking YTD, I'm getting year to date data. So that's what this calculation group was doing. So everything until this point was working perfectly fine. And where the challenge turned out to be, and if you look at the customer dimension, which I showed you earlier, they had a three different attributes on the customer table. Again, these were coming from the backend system, where in MTD this was the grouping for the same store, and for YTD this was for YTD grouping for the same store sales. Doesn't matter, same store, it could be any other attribute. But the point here is, when they were using YTD in their time intelligence period as a selection from the calculation item, they wanted to use this attribute. And when they were selecting QTD, they wanted to use this attribute. And when they wanted to use MTD, they want to use this attribute. Unfortunately, although this looks like a very simple requirement, but it is actually not that straightforward. Basically, we are making a selection. What we did in calculation group, all those various calculations happening, but based on the selection of the calculation group item in the slicer, we want to change the attribute, how we visualize the data, and that's not easy. Let me tell you one thing. You cannot achieve this with field parameter. If you say, okay, calculation groups, again, keep in mind, we're still using calculation groups. There was a reason why we want to use calculation groups there, because it's a larger project. But calculation group is your slicer selection, and based on the slicer selection of calculation group item, in this case MTD, YTD, and QTD, you have to change the attribute as well and pick up the respective column from the customer attribute table. That was not possible using field parameters. So how I did it, this is where data modeling shines, and this is where you have to think a little bit out of the box, how you model your data and make it work. Let's take a look how I did it. To further explain the problem, what I did here is I created a three different table visual where I have a MTD. Again, I'm taking from my customer table, MTD column, same store white MTD and other MTD, that those are the value in those columns, QTD and YTD. Uh, the values of the measures are changing. QTD, if I select QTD, YTD, these numbers will change. That's perfectly fine. But what they wanted is to create a bar chart where they wanted to show if YTD is used and then you want to use the attributes of customer table from the YTD column. If QTD is selected, then use attribute from QTD column, and of course the measure of QTD, and MTD use attribute from MTD column. Unfortunately, that's, as I said, that's not possible. So what we need to do is we really need to change our model. And how I did that was, again, this is where the solution come in the picture. Um, I converted, I'm going to go to Power Query here quickly to walk through what I did here. So once this opens up, so from in the, I created another table called customer same store. Again, that was the requirement called same store. And I took my customer as my source and then I unpivoted my columns. So what I have is a customer and period on the rows and the values on the same store. I call the MTD, QTD, YTD column as my period and the same store value, the value of the customer as in the same store. Again, just to make sure. So all these values will become the values. I call it same store, and the columns MTD, YTD, QTD will become a period. So that's what after unpivoting. And how I did unpivot, just to make sure you understand that, I selected customer table, right click, and then I said unpivot other columns, and that's where it turned out to be. Now once I have this, so what I did is, again, unpivoting unpivoted data in Power BI in the morning is the way to go. It's always you have to think through that why that is important. This is why having an unpivoted data is really important. So once I did this, I'm going to close this because this was just to show you guys. So what modeling changes I have to do? Again, sorry, cancel, I'm not closing this. So I went to the model and I'm gonna go back to my tables here. So other modeling change I did is the new table I added called customer same sales. I dropped that in here and I created the relationship of this table with my customer table. That's the first thing, right? So now because each customer, these MTD, QTD, YTD, I could have I can delete these columns from this customer table because they are not going to be get used. Anyhow, these are here just for demo purposes. So my this new table is now has a relationship with my customer table, and it is one to many because one customer have a MTD, QTD, YTD. So one customer have multiple rows, and other part of it is, which is important, that I have set the relationship to both, because what does that means is when I'm filtering this table, when I'm filtering customer same store table, I also want to filter my customer table. Again, having cross filter direction to both is not a best practice, but in certain scenarios you can do it, but not, it should not be a common practice. I can achieve this result by making changes in my DAX to force the cross filter direction to both. But again, this video is not to talk about that. So I have a relationship of customer with my customer same stores, because one customer can have a multiple customer same store sales, QTD, YTD, and MTD, and then the cross filter direction is set to both. That's the first thing. That's a modeling change. Now, with this modeling change, what I can achieve here is I can really visualization of this thing that based on the selection of the period from my calculation groups items, I can actually force which dimension attribute to select. So how I did that? So what I'm going to do here is I went to the customer same store and I picked up same store column here, and that's my same stores column because right now it's showing everything. And then I put my Meyer in there, some sales. Nothing will happen at this point of time, so let's change it to table visual. So what I have here is, let's bring it up here. So I have a all the attributes. So right now they are not getting filtered, right? When I choose MTD, just the values changes because the calculation group is forcing what calculation to perform, but nothing else is changing. What I want is when I'm selecting MTD, I just want to see MTD here, right? MTD attributes. And when I select QTD, I want to see QTD attributes, but right now I'm seeing everything. And there's just one more thing I did on top of that, and that was I created a measure called filter period. I should call it filter period, but I call it selected period. So what I said is, in this particular measure, which is the core of this whole thing, I mean one of the important part, where I said selected value of time intelligence period. Again, time intelligence is my calculation group, and I'm saying is if selected value of my time intelligent period, which is MTD, QTD, or YTD on the slicer, is equal to customer same store period, again because we unpivoted the data, and I converted this into integer because this internal calculation will give true or false. And the reason I'm converting it to integer is because I want 0 and 1. And the reason why I want 0 and 1, because I cannot use true and false in my filters, like a page level filter or report level filter or video level filter. Only number and text can be used, not the logical values. So that's why I converted into integer. So it will, where time intelligence period selected period matches with the same store period, it will return 1. Where it does not match, it will return 0. So once I have that, then one last thing I have to do here is on my visual level filter and tell here my selected period. Again, this is a visual level filter. The reason why it is visual level filter, because this is a measure, and measure you can only use on a visual level filter. You cannot use it in a report level or a page level filter. So I'm saying is 1 because it's either 1 or 0. 1 means my value, the selected value in the slicer matches with my period in my new table. So as you can see now, so when I'm selecting QTD, I'm just seeing same store QTD, whatever that attributes are in MTD. Again, that's a value of the MTD. I just specifically put the value of attributes to be called it MTD. So this is what it looks like, YTD. So what is happening based on my calculation group item getting selected, I'm changing my attribute, my dimension as well. And how my customer wanted to see this data, they wanted to show this as a stacked column chart. Oh, actually they wanted to show it was a, yeah, and what they wanted to show was just quickly here, and they want same store on legend, not on, because it was a tiny little graph like this. Yeah. So this is how they were showing the values. So now when I select QTD, this attribute or the legend is based on the selection of my calculation group item. So the numbers are changing. MTD is giving me month to date, QTD giving QTD, YTD, and also the attribute is changing. Again, this was only possible because of I updated my data model, semantic model again, no data model. I have to train myself. is so important that you can really achieve something otherwise not possible. All right, I think I'm done here. And again, this is some one of the very weird requirement, but again, I just want my videos are all about weird requirements. Let me know what do you guys think about this video, and I hope you learned few things out of it. Um, Again, make sure to subscribe my channel, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified when the new videos comes out. And also, in last couple of videos, I mentioned that I will be soon starting a new course on Power BI, free of cost. It will be online, in person, and not pre-recorded. So stay tuned for the announcement, how you can register for that and how you can participate in that. Next year, 2024, I'm dedicating to teach people Power BI plus Fabric as much as possible and as much as I know, to share my knowledge with all of you guys. Until then, have a good day. Bye for now. Thank you very much. Cheers.